Containers. Here we can see an example of a group of fields. This group of fields is called services and it has a number of lines. For example, here we can see it's got a line in the first column, it's got an employee. In the second column, it's got a service. There's training services, consultancy services, support services. And then here we have a total column that contains a numerical value. Here we can see the same group of fields called services, but we're only seeing the lines that belong to a container that's called economical. So we can see here that the lines from the container that's called economical are the exact same lines that we're seeing here in the group of fields. But this container is only displaying the lines that meet a certain condition. For example, here it says that the condition is that all those lines where the total value is equal or less than 500 are going to appear in this container. So basically, a container is not a different set of data. A container is the exact same data that we're seeing in the group of fields, but displayed in a different way. So for someone who has a bit of IT knowledge or more experience with tables and databases, the equivalent to a group of fields would be a table, and the equivalent to a container would be a view of that table. So basically a container, it's a view of our group of fields. So we have our group of fields with hundreds or dozens of lines, and then here we have a container that only displays some of those lines based on a condition. Okay, here we can see it's a simple condition. Basically, all the lines that are lower than 500 or the same as 500 are going to appear in this container. So the data is not duplicated. This is important for us to understand. For example, here we have the second line, AP2 Consultancy 500. It's the exact same line here, AP2 Consultancy 500. The information has not been duplicated, but I could display a group of fields in a form, and I could also display a container in a form. So apparently for the user, he's seen two different sets of data, but internally within the system, it's just one table of information. But in this container, he's seen a view with all the information filtered by that condition. Okay, here we're going to see the difference between free and structured containers. The first thing is that when we're creating a free container, the only thing that we're going to define is the name. So we can create a group of fields that's called items, and then we create a structured container. Let's say it's called most wanted items. Okay, that's the name of our container. But we don't set up any conditions because it's going to be a free container. If we create a structured container, for example, cheap items, that means we are going to have to set up a condition. So we're going to give it a name, and besides, we're going to set up a condition. That means that this condition is not dynamic. Every time we're going to use this container, it's going to be used with the lines that meet the conditions that I've set up in my structured container. Then here it says conditions are defined in the transfer system task if we're using a free container. So we already said that when we create a container, no conditions are set. But later on, we're designing a process. In the design of our process, we can indicate a transfer system task to display more or less lines depending on the conditions that are set in the system task. And obviously, they can be used in system tasks, the free containers, but the structured containers, they're not going to be used in system tasks. The first thing I want to do is go to structure and show you guys how to create a container. So obviously the first thing I need is a group of fields. So I'll create a group of fields. I'll give it a name. We can give it a description. I'll save. And I'm going to create a column. It's going to be called credit amount. It could be a whole number or a decimal number column. Let's say decimal number. Okay, I already have one created, so I'm going to put demo behind. There we go. Okay, we're good to go. So here I've got my column created in my group of fields. And I'm going to create some containers. We create them from up here. So we click on containers. And here we can see the group of fields. but I can create some containers. I can create free containers and structured containers. So I'm going to click here on create container. And first I'm going to create some free containers. For example, I'll create one that's called low risk. I'm going to create another container that's called medium risk. I'll create another one that's called high risk. And one last one that's called check requests. I'm going to save and exit. Here we can see all of our free containers. So we can see when we create a free container, all we can do is add a name and a description. That's basically all we can do. And the content of these containers, or what these containers are going to be displaying during the process, it's going to depend on the transfer system task. But now I'm going to create a structured container. So I click here on create container. I give it a name. I click on this option that says structured and I save. Now I have to set up some conditions. We already know how to set up conditions and sets, and we already know how to use a logic operator, so I'm not going to stop to do that. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And the next thing I want to do is show you guys a class of process where I'm actually using containers. Okay, so here I have the class of process. I'm going to open one of these objects, this one here, this personal task. I'll open the form. Okay, here we can see we've got two different divisions. In one of these divisions, I have a group of fields. And here, instead of having where it says container enabled, instead of it saying no, it says container. And here a container has been selected. Here we can see the list with all the different containers I've created. So I've got several free containers and one structured container. So let me go back here. So we can see the container that's selected in this task is this one down here. That's called pending analysis request. Here we don't have any conditions, but if we would set up a condition in this form, the only lines that are going to be displayed are the ones that meet the condition. Another thing I want to highlight is when we create these containers, we can see there's a name that always, before the name, the name of the group of fields appears. And after the name of the group of fields, we have the name of the container. So here we have a group of fields, the one I just created, but here I already had one created. And here we have all the containers. Here's telling me it's being used. And here we can see the conditions, okay? So the status has to be equal to empty, or the status has to be equal to pending analysis. These are the conditions of my structured container. And we can see here in the list how they're displayed. Always first the name of the group of fields, and after that we have the name of the container. When we go to the personal task, we can see it exactly the same. First we see the name of the group of fields, and then here we see the name of the container. Here it's not so important because we're only seeing the containers of this group of fields that's called credit requests. But when we're working with a system task, we might be working with lots of different groups of fields and different containers. So it is interesting to be able to see it like this.